All right, today we're diving into a moment where ancient strategy crashed right into modern warfare. It's a true life-or-death struggle. We're going to see how a military principle, one that's literally thousands of years old, became the absolute key to survival in one of the most dramatic events of the 20th century. And it all kicks off with one seriously chilling command.
So it all begins with this command from the nationalist leader Chiang Kai-shek. And listen, he wasn't just talking about defeating his enemies, the Red Army led by Zhu De and Mao Zedong. No, he was being much more specific, much more sinister. He was invoking the ghost of a catastrophic failure, a historical nightmare, that he fully intended to repeat. The stakes? They just couldn't have been any higher.
And this slide really shows you why that threat was so terrifyingly real. So, in 1935, the Red Army finds itself trapped at the Dadu River. And get this, it's the exact same spot where, 72 years earlier, a famous general from the Taiping Rebellion, Shi Dakai, was cornered by Qing forces. For Shi Dakai, that place was the end. His army was just annihilated. And now, it looked like history was about to repeat itself move for move.
Okay, so to really get how the Red Army faced this, this ghost from the past, we have to rewind, and I mean way back, to Sun Tzu's The Art of War. Because the key to breaking this historical curse, it wasn't just about being brave. It was about deeply understanding a strategic problem that's as old as war itself.
Sun Tzu has a name for this. He calls it military contention, Junzheng, and really, it's the essence of direct competition. It's when two armies are just flat out racing for the same prize. That prize could be a mountain pass, a super important bridge, or even just the opportunity to strike first. And that's exactly the situation the Red Army was in, a direct head-to-head race against the nationalists.
But, and this is a huge but, Sun Tzu gives a really important warning. He says, sure, you're competing for an advantage, but at the very same time, you are competing with danger. It's a double-edged sword. To get that crucial edge, you always have to take a risk. It's the ultimate trade-off a commander has to make.
And this is the heart of that trade-off. Sun Tzu basically lays out two main choices for a commander on the move. Option one, you move with your entire army, lugging all your supplies, all your weapons, all the heavy stuff. The good news, you'll be strong when you get there. The bad news, you'll be slow. Option two, you ditch the baggage train and travel light. Now you'll be super fast, but you're going to show up exhausted, starving, and probably too weak to even fight.
Now, Sun Tzu doesn't just leave this as some vague idea. Oh no, he actually quantifies the risk. He breaks it down into three very specific scenarios for a forced march, and each one comes with a predictable and often pretty brutal outcome.
Okay, scenario 1, the most extreme option, a 100-li forced march, which is roughly 50 kilometers. I mean, this is an all-out, non-stop sprint. Your army gets stretched to its absolute breaking point. The strongest soldiers surge ahead, while the exhausted just fall behind. And according to Sun Tzu's math, only about a tenth of your force, just 10%, will actually make it to the objective on time. The result? Your generals are left exposed and they get captured. It's a total disaster.
Next up, option 2, a 50-li rapid march, so about 25 kilometers. The pace is still incredibly tough, but it's a little more manageable. In this case, about half your army makes it on time. Now that's better for sure, but your lead units are still too weak, and their commander is at serious risk of being defeated before the rest of the army can show up. You're probably looking at a major setback. And finally, we have the third option, a standard 30-li march, or 15 kilometers. This is what you'd call a sustainable pace. Here, about 2/3 of your force arrives together. That gives you enough combat power to be effective, and really importantly, your commanders are safe and sound. This is, the safe bet.
So, the big takeaway here is that Sun Tzu isn't saying one of these is always right and the others are always wrong. Not at all. He's giving commanders a framework for thinking about calculated risk. You have to ask yourself, is this objective so vital, so absolutely critical to our survival, that it's worth the gamble of arriving with only 10% of my army? Is speed really worth the danger of showing up completely broken?
And that brings us right back to the Dadu River in 1935. Because the Red Army was facing total annihilation. Their backs were against the wall. Their only way out was one single crossing point further upriver, the Looting Bridge. They had to get there before the nationalists, and they had to do it now.
So this absolutely impossible mission fell to the Red 4th Regiment. On May 28th, they get this urgent order: cover 120 kilometers of treacherous mountain paths and get to Looting Bridge by the next morning. Now, let's put that in perspective. That is more than double the distance of Sun Tzu's most extreme, most dangerous forced march scenario. They were being ordered to do the very thing Sun Tzu warned would lead to certain disaster.
What happened next was just one of the most punishing marches in all of military history. I mean, they were literally racing nationalist troops who were on the other side of the river. They marched day and night through a pounding torrential downpour, and at one point, in this brilliant move, they lit torches to match the enemy's torches across the river. They pretended to be a friendly unit that had just been defeated, and this little bit of deception bought them precious, precious time.
Yan Jingwu, the regiment's political commissar, he later wrote about what it was like. His soldiers were so exhausted, so sleep-deprived, that they were literally falling down, rolling, and crawling over these slick, muddy mountain paths. To keep from falling into the dark river below, they actually tied their leg wrappings together to make a long rope for everyone to hold on to.
And yet, against all possible odds, in just one day and one night, they did it. They covered the entire 120 kilometers, they stumbled into Looting Bridge at 6 a.m. on May 29th, beating the deadline and, more importantly, beating the nationalists to the punch. What came next is the stuff of legend, the Battle of Looting Bridge. The small number of soldiers who actually made it there launched this unbelievably heroic assault across the bare iron chains of the bridge, all under heavy fire. They secured the crossing, and in doing so, they saved the entire Red Army from the exact fate of Shi Dakai.
And after they crossed that river, Mao Zedong could finally answer Chiang Kai-shek's taunt from the very beginning. He declared that the Red Army was not the Taiping Army and that he and Zhu De were not a second Shi Dakai. They had stared right into the same historical abyss, and through an incredible feat of pure speed and willpower, they had refused to fall in.
But it's so important to understand just how close they came to complete disaster. You see, this incredible victory, it wasn't a rejection of Sun Tzu's wisdom. In a weird way, it was a terrifying confirmation of it. They had pushed his principles right to the absolute breaking point.
Why? Because Sun Tzu ends his whole discussion on this topic with a stark, non-negotiable rule. The Red Army, they arrived fast, yeah? But they arrived with almost nothing. They chose the impossible forced march because the only other option was certain death. They literally risked dying from exhaustion and lack of supplies to avoid dying from the enemy's guns. So this leaves us with a really fascinating final question. Was this legendary march just a desperate, reckless gamble that somehow miraculously paid off? Or was it a profound understanding of strategy? A commander knowing that sometimes the only way to survive is to run headfirst into the very danger that all the textbooks warn you against. Maybe their real genius wasn't in following the rules, but in knowing exactly which rule at what moment had to be broken.